Hello, hello, hello there, beautiful brown girl family. So excited to be back here with you all. Welcome to the replay for those of you who are tuning into the replay, and welcome to the live for those of you who are joining me for the live. I am so excited about our show tonight. So, before I get into all that, I want to make sure as you are coming on that you start introducing yourselves in the comments, that you let us know where you are watching from. Also, if this is your very first time joining me on Brown Girl Boss, if you'll let me know that as well, because I love to celebrate our first timers. Also, I am going to model what I'm about to ask you because I would like for you to also share the broadcast and tag some of your friends. Tonight, we are talking about educational equity, and that is something that is just all in all the headlines, all the news, just all the things right now. So we want to get some folks in here to have this conversation with our guest tonight. So I am grabbing my phone and I'm going to share over on my page to let my audience know that we're live. And if you can do the same thing, I would really appreciate that. And then also, y'all got to let me know who's here down in the comments so that I can celebrate you and welcome you into this space. So give me just a second. We are live. Cool. All right. So I just shared it with my folks. And again, if you will do that same thing, that'll be absolutely amazing. And I see some of you all checking in there in the comments. So thank you. Thank you. So I see we have Brianna is joining us from Tallahassee for the first time. Woo, woo. Welcome. Welcome to the party. Excited to have you. We also have LaPrice is here from Southern California. First timer as well. Yes. Spirit fingers. So excited to have you ladies here with us. And I'm really, really, really excited about this show tonight. So let me actually talk to you about what you are watching since we have some first timers joining us. So good evening. Welcome to BBG TV Brown Girl Boss. This is our virtual platform that allows us to connect you with other like-minded women who are on a mission to live their very best lives and change their slice of the world. We come to you weekly with programming that will challenge and inspire you and get the conversation going to connect with other beautiful brown girls. My name is Kimberland, and I am coming to you from Medellin in South America, in Colombia. I am an educational consultant, advocate, and activist. I'm an intuitive melanated life coach, and I am also your host for Brown Girl Boss. So I'm super excited to have you all here, especially our first timers. And I want to just tell you a little bit about our mission here at Beautiful Brown Girls. So we are all about sisterhood, support, and self-care. Everything that we do is centered around creating authentic friendships, relationships, sharing ideas, sharing experiences. We do everything with love, and we are just trying to reach as many brown girls as we possibly can, both locally and globally. So if you are new here, landing here, come on in, see what we do here at the Beautiful Brown Girls, and stick around because we have a really cool show today. Also, if you are loving the content, I love your feedback, y'all. I need y'all to talk to me and tell me the things, right? The whole point of being live is that we get to interact. So if you are enjoying the content during the show, give me some emojis. As I asked earlier, you can also share the broadcast on your page. And then we're even equipped to get stars. And that really helps us to continue to bring quality content like this. So if you are feeling led to do that, I see them coming in the comments. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So yeah, okay. So I don't want to waste too much time, okay, because I'm super, super excited about our guest. But while I introduce her, I have a question for you all that I want you to ponder on, because I told you that tonight we're talking about educational equity. And that word equity, y'all, I used to work in Florida, and my heart just aches for all the things that are happening right now. But the word has just been twisted and contorted and just so many different things. So I want to know, when you all hear the word equity, what does that mean to you? If y'all could drop that into the comments for me, and then that will kind of help us know who we have in the room and what that looks like and what that sounds like. So when you hear the word equity, what does that mean to you? Okay, that's the question I want you to ponder on. Now, I am going to take a moment to introduce you all to our guest that we have tonight. Her name is Dr. Erika D. Tate. And when I tell you she has energy, y'all, oh my gosh, I can't wait till she gets in here. She's energetic. She's the inspiring founder of Bluknoweldge, LLC, a learning firm that advances equity in schools and communities through collaborative research, inclusive evaluation, and equity-driven professional learning. She launched Lorivor Learning to empower school and community educators to design and deliver equitable and effective learning experiences. She also hosts Remix EQ Live to build community among professionals who center equity in their work, inspiring us to make the world a more just place. So I want you all to drop your questions there in the comments, okay? Because we want to ask all the questions that we can while we have Dr. Erika here with us. All right, so let me go ahead and get her in here. Hey, beautiful.
Hello.
How are you doing over there?
I am good. I am good. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Beautiful brown girls everywhere.
Yes, yes. So definitely excited to have you on. As an educator myself, this has been a show I've been looking forward to for quite a while. So we have so much I know to talk about. But if you will, I guess start us. Usually I ask my guests to start with their origin story. Like, how did you even get into this line of work?
Yes. Well, I always start with just talking about my family. Like, I am a military brat. I grew up all over the world and just moved to so many different places. And it really is what I think set the foundation for me to think about community. I went to like 9 different schools just to give you a sense of how much movement was happening for my family. But everywhere I went, my parents were really great at helping us get established, helping us make connections outside of school, to church, to beauty shops, to other activities. And I just think that really made me appreciate like how many different communities there are and how you can connect to them. And then I just brought that in my work along the way. And so when I graduated high school in Georgia, I ended up going to Brown University to study electrical engineering. So I was really excited about math and science and thought that, hey, I'm good at them, let me do it. But I really found myself spending a lot of time during undergrad developing and building community for students of color and women in STEM majors, and trying to think about ways to support them and help them have resources so that they could have experiences that were successful and that were supported. And then when I graduated, I moved to Silicon Valley. I worked for a couple of tech companies, and when I was doing that, I found myself like in classrooms. I was that person when they were like, hey, do you want to speak to these kids about what engineering is and what your experience? And I was like, yes, I will leave this desk in this cubicle, right? And I will go build robots with these kids, tell them all about it, cheer them on, like, you too can go to the moon. Okay. Right? So I was doing that, and I started to like really realize there was something else. And so I did a pivot and I moved into education. I went into higher education as an advisor for students who were like trying to connect with their faculty, or they were trying to like make the most of their college experience. And then I ended up like coordinating this program that brought students of color or first generation undergrads from across the country to UC Berkeley to study with or research with faculty. And along the way, I would have to host these workshops or bring in guest speakers to teach them like the secrets and strategies for getting into graduate school. And so I was also taking very good notes. And, I was like, oh, people take my GRE. And as I ride the BART study, right? Because I was like, I didn't know that was possible, but here I am giving these workshops on it. And so ended up going to graduate school there in education, so STEM education, and designing technology enhanced learning experiences for students. I connected mine to social justice topics
Yes.
because I thought it was really important for students to learn how to make decisions about their community. And I believe that school is really a space to practice how to be a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
And so design curriculum from that. But because in order to do that, I got so connected with my community in Richmond, California, and with like coalitions. It was on air pollution and asthma. And I became a community health advocate. And I just like all the community that I grew up with, I was finding it there. And I just knew that I couldn't at that time move into an academic position after I graduated. That I felt like my soul and my work was in the community, like so that I could use the skills that I had as a researcher, as a learning scientist, as a community advocate, these things that I learned during my time. And so I founded my business, Bluknoweldge, and we advance equity through schools. Advance equity in schools and communities through collaborative research, inclusive evaluation, equity-driven professional learning. And it really is like a space for me and to bring others in to work on projects that make the world a better place, a more just place. And I'm excited to do it. And I'm excited about the connections that I make in the community that I build and get to be a part of and doing this work. So that's how I.
Wow, there's such a breadth and depth of knowledge that you have, and I always feel like it's really important for folks to understand what brought us to this place, because sometimes it's not really evident at the beginning, right? We start out on these trajectories, and then all of a sudden, all of these things kind of converge. So it's interesting to hear your story of how you got to this place, but even that consistent theme that continued to run through there of this concept of community. Community is what got me here. Community is what I'm seeking to build. Community is who I'm tapping into, right?
Yes.
So when you think about this community building work, what are the things that bubble up for you about what that means and how you explain that to somebody else?
Yeah, so when I think about community, and I can say, I think about it across different contexts. So these are really like themes that I, like you say, like always hold true when I'm working. So I think about even in classrooms, like in community space, neighborhood spaces, like, or, city spaces, like that. And even digitally now, right? Because we have these whole communities. I always think about like the opportunity to be able to show up as you are, right? That you are invited, that you are supported, that you are welcome, to come in and be your truest self, to share those experiences that shaped you, whether they're positive or traumatic, right? That the fact that you have this space to do that, I think the opportunity to dialogue, I think I always talk about being able to use your voice or amplify your voice or bring in the voices of those who are silenced. I think when communities are supportive and when communities are thriving, everybody has space to say what they need to say in the ways that best suit them and that can best be heard. So I always think a voice, showing up, and that dialogue, that ability to exchange ideas, exchange experiences, because I am a believer in collaboration. Like I think that when I am truly collaborating, like I'm not trying to like delegate tasks, right? But when I am sitting here exchanging ideas with you and I am you're adding to my ideas, we're like critiquing each other in this very positive, constructive way, that like the ideas are better, like the solutions are better, the policies that we put forth are better. And so I think that when communities have that space for creation and critique, in loving and caring and compassionate ways, then I think, that's a community, and that's a community for change, right? That's you're building community to make change, to make improvement, to empower the youth or the senior citizens or older Americans, older people, in that space. But you really do have, I don't know, that kind of trust, but also desire to hear and support what other people are doing and saying.
Yeah. So I put a question on the screen, and for those of you who are watching, I would love for you to answer that. What communities are you all connected to that provide those safe spaces, right? So as you were talking, I was kind of trying to think in my brain of those different types of communities, right? And these virtual communities are just like so ginormous now, right? And that's what we are here at Beautiful Brown Girls in many ways for many people. But it does provide those opportunities to really think about what it looks like to make change and what our responsibility is in that. So before I jump into that, I had asked earlier what equity means to the folks who are watching. And I know that the justice work that you do is really centered in that concept of equity. Can you tell us what equity means to you?
Yeah. So when I think about equity or think about equitable outcomes, right, it really is like, let's take a community, which could be anything, right? But when communities have like resources, they have opportunities, they have knowledge. When they have that and they have it in the ways that they need, they are able to thrive. So they are able to
Hmm.
be healthy. They are able to um, learn in the ways that are best for them, and they are able to become socially mobile and move up. So when they put in a day's work that is hard and arduous, that they actually are taking steps toward another job that might be less arduous if that's what they like, but it's also really bringing them a safety and a security for themselves and their families, however that's defined. And I think that the flip is when we think about inequities, we often think about them in terms of gaps. I think that's one of our most
Right,
common ways
right.
of communicating that. And so there's a gap in achievement between two groups. There's a gap in health between two groups. And these groups can be defined by race, such as Black and white students or Black and white patients. It could be social economic status, or wealth status, right? And so we can
Hmm.
think about what does it mean for a family that earns under a certain income or is considered low wealth. What are those opportunities that they have? What resources are made available in the neighborhoods and spaces in which they live and go to school so that they can have that upward mobility, that they can move if they choose to, if they desire, to a
Hmm.
different income level or a different neighborhood, or maybe they want their neighborhood to, as it should, all neighborhoods should have the resources, right, and supports that are necessary for people of all ages and families of all types to really survive. So I think that's the way that I think about it. And when we're working toward equity, we are doing the work that's necessary to close those gaps or to ensure that the appropriate or desired or necessary resources are brought to a particular group. And it doesn't mean it's the same for everyone. It means that's what
Right.
that group needs in order to take that next step toward a better life, however they define it.
Yeah. So I'm hearing you say this concept of ensuring that everybody has what they need in order to be successful,
Mhm.
right? Whatever that metric is that we're using. So you use this word gap. And it is a word that we hear a lot. And sometimes I feel that there is a gap between our communities and understanding the importance of being involved in educational spaces. So, how do you believe that it's best to bridge that gap between a community, let's say, where people don't have children? Right.
Mhm.
So they're not sending their kids to school or worrying about, what is the best school or what have you, or someone who may be new to the community. They didn't grow up there, right? Maybe they don't have kids yet. So they're just kind of like, it's fine, right? How do we bridge the gap between the community and the educational work that needs to be done?
Yeah. So I think a couple of things. Like one is really coming back to what the purpose of school is and thinking about why school exists, why public education exists, or other school. I mean, but public education exists and by
Why? Tell
law.
us why.
Yeah,
Tell us why,
right.
Dr. Erica, because I don't
You're
know that we
asking me,
know.
yeah, but it exists to make sure that that every student, right, has adequate education, that they are learning the knowledge and the skills that are necessary for them to be citizens of this world, right? And so now we understand when you say something like that, like people's political and historical perspectives may shape that. But when you are in a community, whether you have kids or not, the schools that are there are shaping your next generation of neighbors, right? And so it is important to think about what a school is, what a school says its purpose is, and how it demonstrates that, what they're teaching students, and how students are having the opportunity to learn that content and those skills and demonstrate and apply that. And so because what we teach shapes it. So if we read books in school that talk about, like, I have a young kids right now, but talk about being kind and being compassionate, which are really like the foundational blocks for being empathetic, right? And being able to connect to people who might be different from you. So if school is putting emphasis on that, that's wonderful, because that means that these students are going to grow up and they're going to be great neighbors, and they're going to be great collaborators and community builders and community changers. When we are talking about our histories and in our country and across the world, and students are able to engage in that content and see themselves in affirming ways, right? And see themselves as also people who can critique that history and critique that content, then we begin to develop critical thinkers, people who look at information that's presented to them and think, is this true? Is this facts, right? Is this something, if I put on a different lens or a different perspective, would I look at this situation and come to different conclusions? And is that valid? And should I share it, right? And if we have schools that teach kids how to be involved, how to use their voice, so that if students have opportunities to engage in discussions in school and have opportunities to engage in projects where they share their ideas outside of school, then we get vocal citizens, right? And we get people who speak up, whether they're nervous or introverted or shy. They know the value of speaking up about the things that they want and need. And then the people who also went to school with them know how to respect what they're saying and what they're bringing to the table and honor that in respectful ways. And then we can have dialogue as community about the challenges that we're facing. We can put forth solutions in positive and productive ways where we're not throwing hate and we're not harming others, so that we can really change the world. So I think when you think about school and having that purpose, right, that obligation, then there's no way that you can't be concerned about what's happening with schools. Now, we just have to think about what are those pathways for connection, right? Like, are you able to, you might not have kids, but maybe you have a business and your business can have internships, or maybe you have a space and you can have community gardens, or maybe you have a skill set that you can bring to students so that they have real world experiences and exposure to things. And so I think if we rally around the idea of school as preparing your next set of neighbors, then
we might get more invested. Yeah, that's true. And I love the way that you frame that, because I used to say all the time, as I continue to do this education work, but especially when I was working directly with kids, I get the opportunity to literally shape the future. Like, I'm literally holding the future in my hands, right? And that is a really huge responsibility. And what I hear you saying is, even though we may not be educators, classroom educators, that we also have this personal responsibility to invest in the next generation and to make sure that they, as you said, are responsible citizens, that they are showing up in ways that are empathetic and caring about people, right? So I want to talk a little more about that personal responsibility. What do you feel is our personal responsibility to make sure that our mindsets are covered with equity and equitable thought?
Okay. So I think that's a great question. And I always think about it in terms of, like, when I'm working with either like schools or communities and we're thinking about, like, how do we make our space or our practices more equitable, and people will be like, well, just tell me what to do, or what do I need to say? And I'm always like, whoa, slow down. Because I really think it starts with mindset, right? And it starts with a practice of reflection, right? And we have to pause and really think about what it is that we believe about ourselves, what it is that we believe about others who we're working with, if it's a workplace or students, right, that we're teaching, and their families and the communities that they come from, and what it is that we believe they can do. Like, I always think about what are those expectations that we have of the people that we kind of commune with and connect with. And when we do that reflection, we can begin to ask, like, why is it that we think that? Why is this the story in my head about this kid who I really don't know that well? And I definitely don't know his family because I just met him or her on day 3, right, of school. But like, what it is that is there? What biases do I have that could be implicit or explicit? Because
Can
really
we pause right
think
there for a second? Can we pause right there for a second, Dr. Erika? Because that's another word I think that is often misunderstood. This concept of bias. Would you mind sharing with us what that means?
Yeah. So when I think of bias, I think about like what are my leading thoughts, if I'm gonna say it that way, like my leading thoughts, or my but like what is the first thing that comes to mind when I see a person or see a situation, right? And then that those first thoughts or those first inclinations, right, are based on my history, right? They're based on who I know or who I don't know, what I've experienced or what I've not experienced. And it really shapes the story I tell myself about that person. And I think when it's implicit, you don't think about that. And so I think like examples are, they talk about like if a large black or tall black man walks by and a white woman and she clutches her purse, right? And she may not know that she's doing that. It could be about the stories that she has told herself about that. Or if you see a group of teenagers approaching you of, you know, any race, and you're like, oh, these kids are out to get me, or they're truant.
What are they up
right?
to?
They're not in school,
Yeah.
right? And they really, maybe they're out doing a project, looking to interview community members, right? But it's like, what is the story that you tell yourself about youth who look a certain way, and then how does that influence or impact your actions? And because when it's implicit, you don't know that it's happening, and so and the only way to know is for either it to be raised to your attention, or for you to do deep reflection and be in the practice of asking yourself, did I make an assumption about this person? Did I make an assumption about their circumstances based on who they are, or where I met them, or what zip code that they live in, right? You have to ask those questions about yourself, and you have to do that regularly. So I think back to mindset is that you have to be in the practice of questioning or interrogating yourself and your beliefs, and know that that's part of growing and like bettering yourself, but that's just a part of growing as a human, right? And being a better neighbor, being a better like community member, a better collaborator, right? Like when you pause to just think about, how can I be a better friend, right? How can I be a better parent? How can I be a better sister or brother, right? It's really that same work. You know, like you don't want to be in conflict with those you love all the time. Something has to change, and both people on both sides have to think about not always on both sides, but have to think about, but you have to think about, you know, what it is that they're bringing to this, and that's shaping or coloring the stories that they're using to make decisions about their lives and oftentimes other people's.
Yeah. So I thank you for making that plain, specifically with the thinking about what bias is, what is the work that we are doing, and what are we interrogating. Because I think sometimes we think that the right answer is we're supposed to say, I don't have any bias, right? But we all have bias, right? And we can break it down as simply as sports teams, right? I'm from New Orleans. I'm biased to New Orleans Saints. I don't care who they playing. Okay, I'm wearing a bag on my head and I'm gonna be there because I love the Saints, because I'm biased towards them, right? So I think even in you mapping out that work that we need to do, us being able to accept the fact that we have bias and it's something that we are responsible to continuously interrogate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I thank you for really mapping that out. Because I've been calling it the bastardization of words lately, in how we've taken words and twisted them and assigned, these connotations to words that are not necessarily what they were intended to be.
Mm-hmm.
And bias is one of those things. So when we're thinking about our mindsets, what I heard you say is, it's my job to ask myself about the types of assumptions that I'm making. It's my job to ask myself about the way that I view certain groups of people. Now, April Cobb she made a comment and she said, but this is so challenging, getting people to understand the importance of the need for a mindset shift when working with youth that reside in communities filled with so much poverty and crime.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, no, I was saying, like, because everybody wants to jump. I mean, I don't think I can say everybody, but like many people want to jump to action, right? But you really have to think about what it is that you believe about the people you are serving. And I think and I think in two ways, right? There's personal responsibility, but I do think there's also this collective responsibility. So I am going to interrogate my beliefs, and I am going to interrogate my actions and my assumptions about the communities that I'm serving. And I try to do it in my personal life, but also I try to do it in my professional life when I'm working. But I am also going to raise questions with others that I'm working with, and challenge their assumptions and challenge their kind of stories that they're telling and that are leading the work, right? And so I think that it is hard because there are people who are very comfortable in being in conflict, and that is great. I mean, and there is a strength in that, right? But most people are like, well, I'm trying to like work with these people, and I'm trying to, and I need some of the power dynamics, right? And I need these resources that they are providing me so that I can do this work in my community, like money or relationships or partnerships. So I have to be very careful because people don't usually accept right off the bat that they are biased or that they are making, racist or gendered assumptions about the groups that they are working with. And so I think too, part of that work, and it is hard work, I'm not saying it with any like ease, is also finding the courage to challenge those that we're working with or in working against, to think about their biases and to remind them that this work is about understanding what you think about the people that you are working with and serving. And when you get that mindset right, then the practices and the tools that you put in place to make change in these communities, whether you're trying to reduce violence or you're trying to increase food security, right? Or you're trying to just create a safe space where people have homes, like all that work is like contingent on how much respect that you have for communities, how well you listen to them, how much you position yourself as a learner from them, and then also how much you stand up and advocate for them. And some of that advocacy is in saying, actually, you're making an assumption about these youth. Let's think about, or even ask them what it is that they want or need in order for us to best help them.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what might that sound like, right? Because I think many times we stay silent because we don't know what to say, right? And to your point of all of the tap dancing and the mental gymnastics and the contortions and the things, right? Because we're trying to get the work done, right? So I need this for my communities. So therefore, I'm kind of trying to say what I need to say in order to get what I need to get. But what do I say? What does that sound like? What does that sound like?
We're all working on these questions.
Yeah, let's collectively make some. Because what does that sound like? As we're trying to challenge those assumptions and call people into understanding of what's happening, not necessarily to point people out and make them feel bad and all that kind of stuff, but to really invite them to think about something a different way. What might that sound like?
Yeah, no, this is like such a great question. And I think I have like two ways to think, like two ways. The second way is more like another approach it. But I do think, it sounds like, and it depends on where you are in the planning process. And I also say it also depends on where you are in the power and the hierarchy, right? So I am not taking that for granted for anybody who's really trying to do this work. But I think and the work that I do. So, and I'll give a couple of examples. So if I'm working with teachers, right? So like as when I'm an instructional coach, I have the opportunity to plan with teachers, observe them in action. And so when I see something that looks like low expectations of students, or when I see something that looks like practices that aren't really inviting or respecting the voices of students, those are like things that really pop out for me. And I'm like, be cool, be calm. When I say that, is it might look like two things. One, the question is like, why is it that you assume that students could only answer this level questions? You know, and kind of like back in and be there. The other flip is that I present evidence. I'll say, you know, you asked 15 questions today in class. And I know this might sound petty, but I'm going to say this. You asked 15 questions in class, and only 3 kids answered all 15 of those questions. And you called on all 3 of those kids and not the rest of them. Why is that? And then if they say something like, well, they don't want to participate, like why do you have that assumption? And so I think the idea of like raising the question and giving them space to answer, and then providing evidence of what like that practice, right, looks like, and kind of pointing it out and starting to have that discussion there. And I think the other thing is, so when so my organization, we do evaluation, right? And we help like mission-driven organizations who are doing community work. They're trying to improve them in a variety of ways, address inequities. And I think one thing that we can provide, and I think organizations can do this, is really generating tools that ask the community, or generating opportunities that ask community to like let their stories be known, right? So you can provide these like counter narratives to people. So sometimes it like you can say it and you're gonna say it, right? But you know when it's falling on deaf ears, right? But then I think when you are able to create a narrative in the work that you're doing about the people you're serving, or how they're responding, or their experiences, and share that back to funders, share that back to community partners, then that is another way to address that. And that's probably like a way when that power dynamic is so differential, right? That you can't really, you know, most of the time your one voice doesn't feel like enough, and it isn't, right? I mean, it's not like you made that up in your head, but then when you are able to provide that evidence about the experience that the people you are serving as, and if that evidence can be the counter, right, to those stories and assumptions and low expectations, then that is another way that you can address those types of like concerns.
Yeah, I appreciate those examples. And specifically, so I don't even know if I told you this, that I'm a STEM girl as well. So my my bachelor's is in biology. But the reason I bring that up is because I believe in evidence. And evidence is powerful, right? And documentation, whether that be numbers, quantitatively or qualitatively, stories. But the ability to be able to speak from a confident place about what the narrative actually is. Because I heard you say, when we can humanize the people that we are serving, then we have the ability to really be able to do some impactful work. Right. And whether we're humanizing them to ourselves as we're checking our own biases, or whether we're humanizing them and being the voices for them in rooms where they are not present with other people, right? These are all ways as community members that we are really able to change that narrative and really start to peel away at, I wish it were more like a jackhammer, but at this point it's kind of like a tweezer here, a tweezer there, right? But still, in that, every step in the right direction is a step in the right direction, no matter how small. So I appreciate you for giving those examples of how to do that, because
Mhm.
I would love for us to feel a little more confident as we are interacting with people and our family members and our friends and people that we have within our direct circles of influence, and really being able to challenge some of those thoughts. I think that's a powerful position to be in.
Yeah. Can I add something?
Of course you
Oh,
can.
like a third. May I add?
Yes, please.
I think the third thing is really connecting with other people who are doing this work. So, I host like a live stream show called Remix EQ Live, and I interview professionals who center equity in the work. And the reason I do it is because I love all things moving toward equity, right? Across all spaces. But I also think that sometimes when we are doing this work, like the reason it's so hard for us to speak up is because we're usually alone, right? And we're usually isolated. There's just not enough of us in that room or in that space to raise it, right? So we are like literally in high anxiety, like, okay, it's my turn to speak.
Right. And it's all on my shoulders.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think connecting with other professionals who do that work, and it can be obviously like locally in that space, but just even across the world, right? Given our digital spaces that we have, because the other thing that is really important when we are connecting with professionals who have done this work and have seen success or growth in it is that, one, we learn about their practices, right? We learn about like not only what they're doing, what perspectives they're bringing, but why they chose to do that. And if they're really telling that story, which they are, they're also telling those mistakes or missteps or misunderstandings that happen throughout, because we're learning how to do this work. I mean, people are dynamic and different, and communities, are made of people. So we are not going to be able to take a plan or solution that worked in one community and just throw it into another. That's just that is not a useful expectation for this type of work. But we get to see that, and we get to have examples, so then we can bring those examples with us, not only as learning for ourselves, but learning for others, right? And start to have those conversations about, well, what about this would work for our community? What have we tried? But maybe if we use this lens or this approach, it might land better, or it might be more effective, or might be taken up better. So I do think also like seeking out people in communities who are also doing this work to learn from them can help us speak up. And then, over time, we really do have a body of evidence, body of knowledge, really, to speak this case. And then our dialogue is not about whether the stories you're telling are true, but the dialogue is about how we adapted these practices and perspectives so that people could tell their stories about change, and so that we could help others make that change in their community.
Was coming from the framing. I believe there's so much intentionality in words. And I try to be extremely intentional about the types of words that I use. So I'm just appreciating your language that you're using, because you continue to center in on this human aspect of these are people. And I think sometimes we forget that, right? Even the people that we adamantly disagree with, who are just ridiculously all the things, right? Like I don't even have a word to put on it, right? But they are still people with their own stories that have gotten them to this place that they are, right? Something I've tried to embrace lately is this concept of curiosity over judgment, as opposed to judging. Because I used to be very, Dr. Erika, listen, I was bad, girl. I used to be like, hey, you going to the pits of hell today. Like I was I sent them, girl. They was going, okay. But I've been working on that, my grace and mercy and such. But at any rate, I used to be very, very quick to judge. And I've been on this journey of learning to give myself more compassion and grace, which means that I have to give other people more compassion and grace. And I just appreciate how you are framing this work in the human aspect, because that I think is what we often collectively forget, that we are human beings who are dealing with other human beings. And if we can just see the humanity in this other person, then it will make it so much easier to be able to come up with an equitable solution. Because if we care about people, then let's do what's right for people, you
Yes.
know?
Yes. I mean, to see other humans as humane. Right. I mean, like, that's where the problem started, right? Like, we were not seen and still aren't as seen as humans. And and it's sad and it's disheartening, but I think that that's right. I just like how you're saying, like, we just see the human in people. And I think when that happens, you can't but care for people. You can't but put effort into trying to make their circumstances or their
Right.
experiences, their existence, right, better. And so, no, I appreciate that, because it's people. People make up
Mm.
communities. I mean, spaces do too, honestly, but
Yeah.
those are where people convene, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think that if the more people centered we can be, the better conversations we're definitely going to have about this.
Yeah.
And then, hopefully we'll move toward solutions or strategies that help move us along.
Yeah. I want you all to drop your questions in the chat, and I do see the ones that are there. I'm going to grab them in a second, but I wanted to ask you something, Dr. Erika, because we've had a couple comments that have come up about how hard this work is and how challenging this work is. And you gave us a strategy earlier of community, right? And doing this with other people. What I want to ask you is, what do you do in order to keep yourself grounded as you are doing this work? Because self-care is important, right? But in this work, it is so vital because of the types of things that we encounter and the types of stories that we hear and all of that. So what is your self-care practice?
Self-care, with these babies, I'm on I'm trying. It's a work in progress, but I but I think about the things that right, because, like, the work that I do, like, I enjoy doing it, and so I can, like, keep pushing through, and then it'll click at a moment, be like, whew, that was really hard work. And can be really hurtful work, especially
Mhm.
because I am trying to support communities that I'm from. Right.
Yeah.
And so, like,
Yeah.
when people are talking about them as if they're not human, I'm like, oh, that's me. That's my mom. That's my grandma. That's my sister, my brother, my dad,
Yeah.
right? My cousin. And so, it hurts. And I think that over time, over years, I've come to acknowledge that I'm hurt. Like, before, I think I would just be angry, right? Like, I
Right,
mean, which
right.
is as
It's
psychotic,
valid.
but I
Yeah.
don't think I ever was like, why am I angry? I'm just like, I'm mad you treated me this way. Don't treat me like this. I'm better than this. But now I'm like, that really hurt that you assumed or underestimated what I could do. So I think for me, it's helpful for me to really understand, like, how I am feeling and then
Mhm.
dealing with it. And so I'm highly energetic, right? So, like, I need to
Mhm.
move. Like,
Mhm.
I can't sit, period. So I definitely
Mhm.
can't sit in my emotions. And so I like to, like, I feel my best. I like to do things that make me feel my best. And I feel my best when I am moving. I feel my best when I am connecting with other people. Like, I am social. And when I connect with others, and it doesn't have to be around work, and it can be, but even when I'm working, I want to connect to their human side, to their person.
Mhm.
I want to know what they did. I want to know why they're laughing. I want to make them laugh, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think, like, for me, that has just been really helpful, because it reminds me why I do this work. It's because I
Yeah.
love people. And so those, I think, like, I don't know if they quite qualify as self-care,
They
but I
do.
think they are the things that, like, I've just come to a point where I just try to do the things that make me feel my best, and, like,
Yeah.
and set me up to put my best foot forward. And if I can, it's true, like, if I'm moving, I am taking care of myself. And if I am with people who fill me
Yes.
up, and bring me joy, because joy is the
Yes.
state that I need to be in. Like, I'm not real good in any other state. Okay. Like, that's not, like some people, like, I mean, I can do a little anger because it keeps me fiery, but I really
Yeah.
do my
Yeah.
best. And so I think when I can find the things that do that, and I think also, I think the third is like also fight for that. Right. And so when I see that, like, I'm not having my boundaries aren't in place, or I'm not getting the time to set myself up for like success and set myself up for joy, like I'll raise it. I'm like,
Yeah.
I need this time because it makes me a better person.
Yes.
And so I think like that, but it is a continuous journey. Like, so, this is all this work. The work is hard, finding the care, the self-care, the counter, the hard work is also hard, but I guess, you have good people around you.
Yeah, for sure. No, I thank you so much for that. Self-care is something that we talk about all the time here at Beautiful Brown Girls because it is so important, but it's also important to hear that it doesn't look one way, right? So your self-care is what brings you joy.
Yeah.
So if those are the things that bring you joy, then that is your self-care, right? So honoring that and knowing that and being able to lean on that from a place of knowing that this is why I'm doing this, from intentionality, right? Because this is what I do as self-care for me, because that works for me. Yeah.
That's Kimberly.
Yeah. Yeah. I got you, girl. I got you. So we do have a question for you here. April Kopp said, what recommendations or strategies do you have for teachers that serve children from high-risk communities on building healthy communication around inappropriate behaviors by their children habitually in the learning environment? So there are some behaviors that are happening. We need to talk to community about that. What strategies or recommendations do you have?
Okay. So I think, so hopefully I'm understanding the question right. So when I think about, so if the teachers are seeing inappropriate behavior and they want to build healthy communication around that with like the parents and the community.
With the family, so might be the parents, might be the coaches, might be the pastors at the church. How do they help to get that community wrapped around those children that might be showing behaviors that are happening in the school environment?
Well, I think first I think something we've been saying is coming to centering around the child. And so thinking about what those behaviors are, making sure that everyone is observing those behaviors, because we know that behaviors in different, change in different contexts for children, and also trying to figure out what it may be causing that, and having like a very caring, non-judgmental conversation with the families about why, whether this behavior is happening in their home, because like we shouldn't make assumptions, right? And then what they think might be contributing to that behavior. I think that like that's the first part, and just to try to find the root cause. And then I think the next part is trying to figure out together with the family and with other people in the community who care about these kids, which could be like all the people you said, it could be physicians, therapists, like whoever's in that, trying to figure out what a plan is toward changing those behaviors, and identifying what is the behavior that you want to see from those kids. And having, I think to me here, the part that I can contribute to this question is really being upfront about it, but being open to working together to see that, so that those behaviors are changing across many contexts and with the many people that the child touches, because like one person can't change, kids' behaviors for the long term. It really is their community and their family unit and those who are touching that kid every day.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I want you to talk a little bit about where your work is heading. Where do you see the next steps going?
Yeah. So I'm excited. I feel like it's such a, like a growth space that is happening. I was like, a growth space that happened. I think like a few ways that work is moving forward is one, I am trying to work on having more speaking engagements. I'm really working on using my voice, right, to amplify the experiences that I have had and the expertise that I have gleaned from working in schools and communities. So talking about instructional equity, really what can teachers and leaders, instructional leaders do in their schools and classrooms to meet the needs of every student. I also like talking about how to connect professionals who center equity in their work and what we can learn from each other, as well as how can we help organizations that are mission driven, which include schools, right, in our communities, to really generate this evidence of impact so that they can tell the stories of their change. In terms of like K through 12 spaces, so we've been offering a workshop for teachers, like professional development for teachers, for how to plan for instructional equity in their classroom, how to increase participation and achievement. But going forward, I'm really excited about this opportunity to create a certification program for leaders, right? So that leaders can show that they are instructional leaders within their schools and within their communities, and so that they can demonstrate their commitment and their competence in instructional equity. And so that's something I'm excited. It's very new, but
instructional equity certification.
Yeah. So I want so that leaders can do it, so that they can think about how can they support teachers in their school building to be able to carry this out, and also to, I think, I always have like under there is to connect them with others, because leaders are mobile, right? They move up and over, and I think that they need tools that they can take to many different places, but they also need people to connect with and talk about and brainstorm with as they do that. And so that's coming. And then the final part is that we're ramping up evaluation. So if there's any mission-driven organizations who are looking for an evaluation partner that really centers community and thinks about voice and thinks about the humans and the spaces and how to learn from them so that you can better serve them, then hey, we're here for you. But all of this work keeps me excited. It keeps me energized, and it all really pushes toward building advancing equity, closing those gaps, making the world more just. I love the opportunity to continue to work with different people in different places and do this work. So, because I think I'm the learner, right? I get to learn from them, and I get to pass it along to others.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. So y'all, I'm about to drop Dr. Erika's LinkedIn page in the chat there so that you all can go over to her page and connect with her and really just dive in. As she said, we need community, right? So we can never be connected to too many people who are doing this good work and doing this good fight of justice work, and really making sure that we have equitable spaces for our teachers, for our children, for ourselves, right, in our communities. So so I dropped that in the chat there. Where else can people find you? Is that the best place, right, on LinkedIn?
Yeah. If you find me there, I'm there, and then you have all my information. My website will be listed, and then so you can connect. And then you can feel free to send me a message. I love that. I love the people. So please, I'm excited.
Awesome. So that is there for you all. Don't run yet though, y'all. I want to give you some really quick announcements about some of the things that we have coming up. So first, we want to make sure that you are connected to us here on Beautiful Brown Girls. So if you go to beautifulbrowngirls.com, there you'll be able to see if there's an in-person brunch chapter in your area. You can learn more about our mission and vision, learn more about our team, and just really what this movement is about. We also invite you to like us on our Facebook page, Beautiful Brown Girls, and join our Facebook group, Beautifully Shaded. We are also beautifully shaded on Instagram and on Twitter at Beautiful Brown You. We're also getting our YouTube page established, so that is over at Beautiful Brown Girls as well. Quick programming notes for some upcoming things that we have going on here on BBG TV. On our next episode of Brown Girl Boss is actually going to be a mental health awareness panel. Just as we've been talking about tonight, y'all, we are tired, okay, as brown girls in America. So we really want to provide the opportunity to be able to connect with some mental health professionals and talk about creating space to rest, okay? So we can go lay down somewhere. So we will have Dr. Linnell Plummer with us. She's a licensed mental health therapist and the CEO and founder of the Onyx Therapy Group. And then we'll also have Jasmine Forts with us, who is a rest alchemist, an HR leader, a licensed herbalist, and a yogi. So we definitely want your voice and fingers, okay, to type away in the place for that. And then our last episode for the month of May is with Melissa West. She is the founder and CEO of Fit for Legacy. She's a legacy coach. So she's going to be talking to us about how we can leverage things like life insurance to be able to set ourselves up for success now, and also make sure that we are leaving behind blessings for those that are coming behind us and not burdens. So this is a conversation that we've been needing to have for a really long time, and some of us avoided like the plague, but it is time for us to have that conversation. So that will be on May 31st. Also want to make sure that you all get connected to me. If you would like to do that, you can find me on KimberlyJackson.com and or on Minding My Black Ass Business on all platforms. And that is where I am doing my work. And there are also lots of shenanigans that are happening over there in those spaces. So you definitely want to check that out. Now, having said that, Dr. Erika, the people came in late, right? They was like, oh my God, I thought it was at this time and I missed it. Dang. And they didn't catch anything you said. What is one thing, the final thing that you want to leave with the people before we go?
I want people to speak up. I want them to use their voice to share their story, to challenge the stories that people are telling about them in their communities, and then use their stories to connect to others who are doing similar work or even different work, but that's going toward the same goal. So I just think, use your voice, find the right people to prop you up so that you can speak up, and continue to do this work that is making change in communities.
I love that. I thank you so much. This was amazing. And I just really appreciate you sacrificing your time and energy to be with us and to connect with us in the Beautiful Brown Girls community. You are officially a part of our community. So definitely be sure to keep us in the loop about everything that you have going on so we know how we can support you. Again, you all run over to Dr. Erika's spaces over there on LinkedIn, run to her website, all the things. We want to make sure that we remain connected and that we continue to support this work.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. It was an absolute pleasure. All right, y'all. So the conversation doesn't stop here. You can continue commenting. You can continue sharing. You can continue liking. Okay. You can continue tagging people. Somebody needs to hear this. So help us spread the word. And we will see you not next Wednesday, but the Wednesday after for the next episode of Brown Girl Boss. Next week, we'll have another episode of Brown Versation. So we'll see y'all then. Bye.